I'm joined now by the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
So we have some breaking news here as it relates to Donald Trump's deployment of not just 2,000 National Guard, but an additional 2,000 National Guard and then 700 Marines. And so can you explain what that new news is?
Yes, today we are filing a temporary restraining order request with the federal judge in the Northern District of California as part of our case that we brought yesterday. We argue in our case that the president does not have any legal basis for deploying the National Guard or the Marines into LA. And today we are asking that the court issue an order immediately ordering that the deployment be invalid and unlawful and blocking their deployment into Los Angeles.
Okay, so if this temporary restraining order is granted, how quickly could it go into effect?
By design, temporary restraining order requests are ruled on swiftly because of the potential for irreversible and irreparable harm and injury to the requesting entity here, the state of California. So we could get a ruling within hours, as we have in some of our other cases when we've sued the Trump administration, or it could be a matter of days, but it will be swift. We should get an order by the end of this week.
Is there any way that Trump could justify his actions given the fact that the law clearly states that the governor has to be consulted before the National Guard is sent in? And of course, in this instance, he wasn't.
I don't see it. That part in particular is absolutely clear as day in our favor on the merits. The statute, as you say, that the president relies on for his executive order bringing in the National Guards people says that the governor needs to be consulted. There needs to be the governor's consent. Not only did Governor Newsom not consent, he strenuously objected to the deployment of the National Guard into Los Angeles and has said that repeatedly. The statute that the president relies on also requires a rebellion to be present, which there's not, a invasion to be present, which there's not, or the inability of the United States of America to enforce and execute the laws with their regular forces. And that doesn't exist either. So the clear, unambiguous language of the statute, the elements that are required to be there for the president to be able to lawfully rely on that statute are not present. And so we believe this is not a closed case and that the court will find in our favor and should, and we believe will, issue a temporary restraining order.
Well, some of the verbiage that's used in that statute is rebellion or invasion. And obviously, in an effort to reverse engineer the ability for the administration to do this, to justify their actions, they've already been coming out, for weeks and claiming that there is an invasion, there is a rebellion. And so, given that the language is so subjective, does that pose any issue that Trump can just say, yes, there is an invasion, yes, there is a rebellion, that's why we had to do this?
It's clear what they're trying to do. They are trying to manipulate and twist the language, giving it their own definitions and calling things that aren't invasions, calling
Right.
things that are not rebellions, calling things that are not emergencies, because they know that those are the words that are in the statute. So they're trying to appropriate that language and hopefully get what their true goal is, which is the power that comes when there actually is a rebellion or an emergency or an invasion. But it doesn't matter what they call it. It matters what it is. They can't change the facts just by giving it a different name. And, we are seeing mostly peaceful protests with some accompanying acts of violence, which unfortunately often comes when opportunists and agitators take advantage of the situation for their own goals, and those people must be held accountable. But this is garden variety, common vandalism and property that we've seen many times, that the largest sheriff's department in the nation, the LA Sheriff's Department, and the third largest police department in the nation, the LAPD, are well equipped to handle and have handled. And they have the opportunity to get mutual aid if needed as well. And by the time the National Guard came to LA on Sunday morning, they were met with quiet streets, no emergency, no rebellion, no invasion, no uncontrolled violence. And so I think that puts the lie to the terms that the president is using when they try to use invasion and rebellion inappropriately.
What would it look like if the temporary restraining order, the TRO, is actually granted? What are next steps? What are the mechanics of this thing if a judge does rule that the deployment of these, 2,000 National Guard troops plus an additional 2,000 plus, these hundreds of Marines is actually illegal?
It'll depend on what the scope of the court order is, but generally, if we are successful in getting our request for a temporary restraining order granted, the court would render the deployment of the 4,000 National Guards people and the 700 Marines unlawful and invalid, and they would need to be either redeployed to other locations where they're doing lawful, where they have a lawful mission, or they would be restricted from doing law enforcement activity in civilian locations in Los Angeles and California. So it could take a number of different forms. They could be redeployed. They could be heavily restricted in their role. But either way, they would be prevented from doing what Donald Trump wants them to do.
We've also seen that the National Guard that have been sent into California, the conditions are subpar. There's a lot of photos floating around the internet, including ones that were shared by Governor Newsom himself, that show that they're sleeping on the floor because there wasn't preparations taken to actually make sure that they have the proper accommodations. So can I have your reaction to the fact that this all feels so thrown together that even these folks who were sent in aren't being taken care of on their end?
My reaction is it's embarrassing, it's disrespectful, and it's insulting to the men and women of the California National Guard who are patriots, who are servants, who have a critical role, who don't deserve to be treated as political pawns for the delight and pleasure of the president, who deserve respect and deserve to be able to fulfill a mission that advances safety and security and promotes California. Many of the National Guards people were doing just such tasks before they were pulled away to come to LA unnecessarily and counterproductively. Some were on the border in San Diego tackling the inflow of fentanyl into our communities and making sure our communities are safe from this deadly poison. Others were tackling wildfires as wildfire season continues to proceed here in California. So they were pulled away from these important roles at the bidding and pleasure of Donald Trump to be weaponized and to become political pawns. And we did see them without adequate food and water. We saw them without adequate sleeping conditions, sleeping on one another on the floor. And that is very sad to see the president of the United States treating our military personnel in that way. They deserve better. They deserve greater respect and greater dignity.
Speaking of the politicization of all of this, we've seen this talking point being floated by folks in right-wing media, by Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, this idea that arrest was on the table even for folks like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. And so can I have your reaction to that, the fact that this is now in the zeitgeist, the prospect of Trump having his political opponents arrested that even lead this state and this city?
In one way, it's more silly, toxic, tough talk, bluster and bluffing and threatening and bullying. It's sort of their brand, what they're known for.
Yeah.
Big talk, over-promising, under-delivering. And so it's and certainly without merit. But I'll also say it's very dangerous. The president was asked, "What's the crime that Governor Newsom committed?" And he said, "Running for governor," which is obviously completely lawful, not a crime. And what is happening here is that the president of the greatest nation on earth is threatening to arrest a political opponent who has done nothing wrong but disagree with him, and to weaponize the politics to harm a political opponent. And that is wrong. That is not who we are. That is the antithesis of who we are. It's undemocratic. It's un-American. So it is reckless and it is dangerous. They're starting to walk back the statement somewhat today because I think they've been embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
But we all know you can only arrest people when they commit a crime. Governor Newsom has committed no crime. But these threats to go after political opponents for no reason is very dangerous, very reckless, and very disturbing.
Do you see these kind of threats in a different light, given the fact that we have seen members of Congress, Democratic members of Congress, judges, Democratic staffers, all who actually have been arrested by this administration?
Yeah, I mean the arrest of the judge in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
Mayor of Newark, Congress member in New Jersey, a labor leader in California.
Yeah, I think Jerry Nadler's staffer in New York.
The list goes on. And so, they're looking for that. They're loving the opportunity to overreact and over arrest and overcharge. They want to go after their political opponents. And I think Trump's statement just made it very transparent and clear that they don't even need a lawful reason
Right.
to act, and they're willing to arrest folks when there's no crime committed. And that is very dangerous and disturbing.
This is a bit of a political question that I'm hoping you can opine on a little bit, but prior to ICE being sent in the first place, everything was peaceful. And so, to what extent do you think that this was manufactured, that this was engineered by Trump to, for example, take the attention away from what was a really politically damaging week for him with the fallout with Elon Musk, the tenuous path forward for his budget bill, a bill that, by the way, would strip healthcare away from 14 million Americans, cut food assistance to the tune of $300 billion, that would blow up the deficit to the tune of trillions of dollars. And so there was a lot of negative political coverage on him only until the point where he can figure out a way to get something else into the zeitgeist by sending ICE in, and then, of course, kind of engineering the uprising that we're seeing right now as some justification for him to then send troops in and send thousands more troops in, and then send the Marines in. And so, to what extent do you think that this was all a purposeful strategy to distract?
It seems a classic distraction, deflection from harmful coverage that a political leader was receiving. The big ugly bill is very problematic, and I know he wants less analysis and scrutiny on that. His divorce with Elon Musk also messy and ugly, and he certainly wants people to think about other things. So, to the fact that this is California, and not just California, but Los Angeles, an iconic California city in a blue state that absolutely rejected Donald Trump in the last election. He was thrashed and destroyed. It's embarrassing to him. His ego can't handle it. And he has made clear that he will target and go after blue states as part of his political vindication and his political vengeance tour. And so this has multiple, I think, benefits for his political agenda. It distracted and deflected from bad news coverage and gave him an opportunity to try to beat up on a blue state, which he sees as an enemy, instead of being a president for all of America, including all of the 40 million people in the great state of California. But he's done it unlawfully. He's picked a fight that he can't win. I think the courts will slap him down immediately, as he deserves to be yet again. We've brought 25 lawsuits in 20 weeks because that's how blatantly and brazenly and consistently and frequently the president has violated the law. This is another blatant violation of the law, and we believe the court will hold him accountable and block his unlawful activity.
And finally, let's finish off with this. I'd mentioned in my previous question about the fact that this all was kind of incited because of ICE coming in. California is a majority minority city. Immigrant communities, migrant communities are a major part of the tapestry of Los Angeles. And so what is your message to folks out there for whom fear has been stricken in their hearts at the prospect of them being taken away? And these aren't just, I'm not talking about the hardened criminals, because that kind of talking point has come and gone. These are folks who are productive members of society, many of whom are paying taxes, people who are making sure that we have food on our tables, that we have homes that are built, who are now afraid to go to work or afraid to attend their kids' graduations, afraid to even go out into society for fear of being kind of plucked up by ICE and being deported. So what's your message to that community who might be especially afraid right now?
Yeah, to our beautifully diverse, hardworking California immigrants, I say this. I see you. I value you. I know that you're fearful, anxious, worried, concerned by President Trump's unlawful actions and rhetoric. And I want you to know that in California, you belong. You have rights. If your rights are violated, they must be vindicated. And in California, I and our leaders value you and know that you are such a critical part of who we are, who we've become, who we will be. We are a state of beautiful immigrants. My mom was an immigrant from the Philippines. I was born in the Philippines and brought here because my parents wanted democracy and freedom and due process and the rule of law for me. And we will do everything in our power to defend and protect our immigrants who are law-abiding and productive, who have made California great. So please know that California has your back, and we will continue to lift up our immigrants.
Attorney General Rob Bonta, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Honored to be with you.